December 12th, 1914. Yesterday, I found out some very bad news. My mother has lung cancer. I haven't seen her since 1912 and have been thinking very much about going to visit her. She is in town at the hospital where she is receiving treatment. She was transferred from Philadelphia so that she could have proper treatment. I cried so much as my gut hurt. I found out when Jack had been so supportive that he even took the day off to be with me. I feel so sick and trapped yet again, torn apart between my thoughts. I love my mother dearly. I cannot help but feel some guilt and blame for leaving her alone after that disaster. She does not know my existence or of my daughters. If I visit, would she welcome me with open arms or just turn me away? I will have to find out. I have to see her. She may not have that much long left to live, and if I never saw her again, I would never forgive myself. Been a mother myself now, I completely understand her for what she did to protect me at times. As I just a child myself, she went the wrong way about protecting me and being a mother, and now I know she is a very selfish woman and made my life misery, but for some years, but she's still my mother. Other than that, my life here is good. Jack is working at the furniture store and has been promoted to be the chief or staff now, which that means he's in charge of the workers who make furniture, which he's very happy about. Jack also put together a few sketches and will be starting a new job just after Christmas at a theater, a company a few blocks away. He will draw posters and then they will be shown outside of the theater to advertise when the play will be shown. I am so proud of him. I have auditioned about a few plays, but had not any luck as of yet. Besides, I am very happy about my life at the moment. Maggie is about almost 2, and just started walking last summer, which was the most proudest moment of my life. She was also talking a lot too. She is her daddy's little girl through and through. Now, she dotes on him, but she does dotes on her. Jack and I have talked about having another baby, but deciding now is not the time. Maybe when Maggie is a little older. Life is good here, and I miss my friends back in New York, but I love it here. It seems so serene and peaceful. The house we live in now is much larger than the one in New York. At least it has an upstairs. It's still very small though, with 3 rooms downstairs and 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, and upstairs Maggie has now her own bedroom, so Jack converted the spare room into a studio for his drawings. For now, at least, until we decide to have another baby. I celebrated my 20th birthday in November, and Jack celebrated his 23rd. It seems so real that so little time we have grown up so much. Jack is now very much a man compared to when I first met him. He has a very fit body now, and he has even grown a small beard, which I don't mind, but underneath he's still very much like the same man I fell in love with. However, that changed very little. I cut my hair last summer for the first time in almost a year now, and it's just the shoulder length and much more controllable. I feel that I have grown in so many ways, especially since Maggie was born. I would look at her and think, where did time go? I felt that I was just a small child when Jack and I met. We did so much irresponsible things, not caring of the consequences. We became parents at very young and grew up at very young, but I wouldn't change any of that now. This is how things were meant to be. I love this path I chose, and it can only get better. Rose Dawson. Closing her diary, Rose checked the kitchen clock. It was 1:15 p.m. Dinner had already been made and the dishes were washed. Jack was working until 3, and Maggie was there with the neighbors who had just taken an instant to shine the little toddler as soon as they met. They have a little boy named Andy who is 3, and he and Maggie became playmates. Shelley and Martin Booth had just become friends of Jack and Rose's, and they have often dined with them when they went dancing together. Rose had straightened out her light blue dress and stood in front of the mirror and saw her reflection. She ran her hands over her stomach area and wriggled slightly. The fitting was more snug now than before. Maybe she had gained a little bit of weight from not doing so much anymore. Of course there was housework, washing, ironing, sewing, and mending. but she wasn't working anymore and felt that she would sit around to read or knit, while her daughter was playing next door. She needed a hobby or some friends. The new life here was good, but she missed having friends. She made some good ones in New York, and of course, there was Samantha, but Rose knew nothing about where she lived. Rose applied a small amount of rouge and some light pink lipstick in the mirror, brushed through her hair. She wasn't sure why she did this. She had no intentions of going out anywhere. Rose looked at the clock yet again, and it was just a few minutes after 1:15. She sighed. She knew that what was on her mind was her mother. She had been hesitating whether or not to actually visit her in the hospital. Rose knew the cancer could be a killer, and a relative had died from it when she was very young. Sitting on the couch, Rose began to play with her hair and exhaled heavily, attempting to think of other things. Finally, Rose just decided to go and visit her mother at the hospital, which was a few blocks away. She would feel better knowing if she was alright or not. After packing a small bag and a sandwich, Rose headed for the hospital. Her head spun around in the afternoon heat. The sun had become hotter than ever, and Rose could feel the sweat on her forehead. She could feel her feet dragging hesitantly, but she carried on walking. She was unsure of her mother's reaction, of what she would say or think or do. What would Jack say? Only one way to find out through. She thought as she entered the building. As the hospital was cooler, but she hated the smell. It was enough to make her stomach churn. She hated hospitals, as a matter of fact. She hadn't been one in years. Walking to the front desk, Rose cleared her throat and got the attention of the receptionist. "May I help you, miss?" The woman spoke clearly, looking over at her spectacles. "Yes, could you tell me which number roof Duet Bake Taker is in?" Rose asked nervously. "May I have your name, please?" the receptionist asked. "Yes, it's Rose. Rose Dawson. Miss Duet Bookcaker is in room 322. The receptionist smiled. "Thank you," Rose nodded, before beginning to find room 322. Her head spun at this moment as she felt so unreal as it could be. After everything she was here, finding her mother after everything she had done and said, it took Rose to gang all of her strength to pull herself forward and convince herself that this was the right thing to do. Finally, Rose found room 322. She took a couple of minutes to prepare herself outside of the door, then took one last deep breath before entering and opening the door. She could feel her hand shaking as she was turning the knob. She nervously peeked in her head around the room and noticed a small, frail figure in the bed sleeping. Walking closer, Rose saw, indeed, was her mother. Her hair was long and was still the same fiery redness which Rose possessed, but her face was thin and gaunt. This did not look like her mother. The room was full of flowers and a few cards. It still had not brightened up the white color of the room. A small seat was beside her bed. Rose hesitated whether to stay or leave. She decided to stay. She fell asleep afterwards, and she was doing no harm. Shakily, Rose took the seat and watched her mother sleeping. This did not feel real. She felt like almost the past 2 years that had been erased, and Rose Dawson did not exist, and that she was still Rose Dewitt Bulktaker, the society girl. She felt a small tear in her eye and hesitantly reached out for her mother's small frail hand. She looked pale and ghost-like. A few tears escaped from Rose's eyes, and she delicately stroked her mother's hand. She closed her eyes and rested on the bed. Unbeknown to her, Ruth Dewitt Bulktaker had just awoken from her sleep. "Rose?" an unsure and groggy voice asked. Rose's heart froze. She wasn't supposed to be seeing her. Lifting her face from the bed, Rose looked up and saw the woman's face for the first time since she had left on the Titanic. "Hello, Mother."